When it comes to photography, the two most important elements are the proper exposure and composition. In this video, we're going to discuss both. And we're going to start off first with the composition elements. And to do that, we're going to look at two photos. This photo and this photo. These are photos that I took at the Sorona market in Tel Aviv not long ago. But if you want to submit your own photos for me to review, just send me a DM to my Instagram. I'll leave a link in the description. So let me pull them up at the same time so we can compare them. So if we look at both of these photos, we can see that, of course, it's the same subject, but the way the composition is arranged makes a big difference. In the leftmost picture, it's a very flat orientation of the subjects. The little basket of condiments and the utensils, they're parallel to the viewer. And so there's not much direction happening there. It's a very lateral movement through this frame. Contrast that with the photo on the right, and we see here that we have this angle going on here that's leading the eye down or along this line here, right? We have the angle of the line and the condiments and the utensils makes a very strong diagonal. We also have the menu mimicking that angle, so it says diagonals are always more energetic and active than when we have horizontals and verticals. So hopefully putting these two pictures like this together, you can feel and sense that difference. So it's very important to develop that sense, and hopefully by putting these two pictures together and contrasting in this way, you can see and sort of get the feeling for the fact that the picture on the left is more static versus the picture on the right is a little bit more dynamic. It's not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. It depends on the focus and what you're trying to accomplish in your picture. Something else I want to contrast here are the different ways the eye is led through the frame. So if we'll focus on the picture on the left here, so the way a viewer's eye is led through the frame has to do a lot with the elements in the picture. So in this photo, the way it appears to me is that the viewer's eye is first going to be attracted to the main subject area. We have the condiments on the left with this bright, colorful area, and then we have this large container on the right with the utensils. So these two items combined is going to be the main focus, and the first thing attracts the eye in the scene. So the eye is going to basically enter from the right side. And there's going to be a little bit of an interaction between these two subject points, right? The brain understands that we have two elements here, and it's going to be jumping back and forth between these two as the main focus of interest. However, what's going to end up happening is at some point, it's going to loop around like this to the outer element, to the outside of the picture, and then come around, right? We have this nice golden color over here, which is also duplicated in the bottom. And so we have this pleasant surrounding area that helps create a consistency in the outside of the picture in the background, the non-subject area. So it helps bring the eye around and back into here to the center. So that's what I see happening in a photo like this. In this photo, it's going to be a little bit similar. We have the eye comes in over here in this main subject area, and it's sort of led along to roam along this line back and forth, right? So we have here, particularly what I did is I darkened this area in the top left a little bit to help so that the eye isn't led off the page. There's a little bit of a vignette going on over here. Something also I want to point on this picture is the original picture, before I cropped it, looked like this. So it has the same idea of this diagonal movement. However, I felt it detracted a little bit because there was so much non-subject area, like here's our subject area, and there was so much area that was not the subject that I felt the eye was sort of hanging out too much over there. So we can compare the before and after. So this is the before, and then in the after, you can see that it keeps the eye focused in the subject area a little bit more, which I liked. This picture didn't start off this way. This picture, in fact, started off looking like this, a bit different from the end result. And I just want to take you through the steps I did to get from the beginning to this end result here, so you can see my process. The first thing I typically like to do is to see what Lightroom will do with its auto settings. So if we go to settings and auto setting, which is Control U over here, so we get Lightroom's default or basic approach to how to handle the picture. What I like about this is that it does bring down some of the highlights, and we get more details. We see the before and after, right? You get some more details. It evens things out a little bit more. But I would like to brighten up a little bit because this really is too dark, and I want a more, when it comes to food photography for sure, you want brightness, and bright food definitely looks more appealing. So we're going to bring up the exposure like this, and then to bring back a little bit more of the details, we can go to the dehaze and increase that a bit. You have to be careful with dehaze, because if you go too far, it's going to end up changing the colors a little bit and look a little wonky. Just for example here, it's brought out too much texture and color in the countertop, I think, over here for sure. So just it's something to play with, and more subtle amounts makes a big difference. So here we have, like, this is the before and after. So next thing I'm going to add is I want to really brighten up the focus, our subject here. And to do that, I'm going to go and create a linear gradient. Going under Tools, and under Create New Mask, we have a option for linear gradient. Shortcut is M. So for here, I'm going to create my gradient and pull down. So that's over here. And then exposure, I have my default exposure always at plus 0.22, just so I can see that's happened. And usually when I'm using a linear gradient or mask, I'm usually bringing things brighter and not darker. So this works well for me. But besides this, I'm also going to increase the shadows a bit, just a little bit. Okay, like this. And this really makes the subject really pop. Click M again to lock that in. And now for my next linear gradient, I want to take this top left corner, like I said earlier, and bring it back down. So in this case, I'm going to cancel out this exposure by double clicking on the word exposure, and that brings it back to 0. And now I can make it a little bit darker. I don't want to go too extreme. I like all my edits to look natural. So I'm going to take this down and a little bit of the highlights like this. And M again to lock that in. I have another picture that I want to discuss with you about composition, which looks like this. And this is how it started out. What I like about this picture is we have this area in the front, which has this main focused area and a nice diagonal as well, dynamic. The background is this really beautiful bokeh because it was shot with f5.3, the aperture 5.3. And so here the foreground is sharp and the background is blurred. And it helps, again, create this two layers as well. We have their subject over here at an angle, and we have the background also with a complementary angle, but blurred, so it doesn't take away or detract so much from the focus. So to edit this, to get this to where I would like it to be as a final picture, we're going to go again with auto settings, which we said before was Control U. And that brings it up a little bit, not so dramatic, which we're going to deal with that in a moment. Let's also change the exposure, which was Control Shift U, as we can see over here under settings, auto white balance, Control Shift U, and now it has a more realistic look to it, but make it brighter, as I like to do, especially for food photography. We're going to go again with dehaze, and this time I'm going to go and into our darks and bring down the darks a little bit as well. So that adds a little bit more dramatic mood to the photo as well. I'm going to also then play a little bit with the texture because I want to bring out a little bit more of the texture of these fruits. So something like this, maybe a little bit less there. And then for clarity, because I think the texture brought in a little is making things really sharp, so it might look a little bit unrealistic. So we're going to take the clarity and drop that just a little bit, like this. And the last thing I want to do is that now that we've brightened this picture so much, I think, to me, this bottom right hand section over here is a little bit too bright and distracting. Actually, it's drawing the eye too much. So I'm going to create another linear mask and pressing M to make a linear mask and draw this out here. And then I'm going to, again, take the exposure down a little bit and the highlights down, right, like that. And then we can also do is do it one more time in the farthest edge, take the exposure, and we'll just see what happens if we take the highlights down only. See that? Like this. So this is our before and after. I think we'd even make it maybe a little bit brighter, the whole picture. Okay, so So we've now brightened it just a touch more. So we went from here to there. And so that is a quick overview of both composition and lighting and how they play such an important role in your photos. And if you've enjoyed this photo critique, then check out my book, Composition Techniques to Create Compelling Photos. Chock full of examples and practical exercises, you'll learn how you can take your photography from good to great. It's available both as a paperback and digital download on Amazon. I'll leave links in the description below. Thanks again so much for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments and seeing you in another video.